Clotheshorse is brought to you with support from the following sustainable brands. Selena Sanders, a social impact brand that specializes in upcycled clothing using only reclaimed, vintage, or thrifted materials from tea towels, linens, blankets, and quilts. Sustainably crafted in Los Angeles, each piece is designed to last in one's closet for generations to come. Maximum style, minimal carbon footprint. Picnic Wear, a slow fashion brand made by hand in New York City from vintage and deadstock textiles. Picnic Wear strives for minimal waste but maximum authenticity. Future vintage over future garbage. Find Picnic Wear on Instagram at Picnic Wear, and that's Wear, W-E-A-R, and at www.picnicwear.com. No Flight Back Vintage, bringing fun new life to old things. Always using recycled and secondhand materials to make dope-ass shit for dope-ass people. See more on Instagram at No Flight Back Vintage. Shift Clothing out of beautiful Astoria, Oregon, with a focus on natural fibers, simple hardworking designs, and putting fat people first. Discover more at shiftwheeler.com. Late to the Party, creating one-of-a-kind statement clothing from vintage, salvaged, and thrifted textiles. They hope to tap into the dreamy memories we all hold. Floral curtains, a childhood dress, the wallpaper in your best friend's rec room, all while creating modern, sustainable garments that you'll love wearing and have for years to come. Late to the Party is passionate about celebrating and preserving textiles, the memories they hold, and the stories they have yet to tell. Check them out on Instagram at Late to the Party People. Vino Vintage, based just outside of LA. We love the hunt of shopping secondhand because you never know what you might find. Catch us at flea markets around Southern California by following us on Instagram at vino.vintage so you don't miss our next event. Old Flame Mending helps you keep your clothes intact through clothing repair, visible mending, and tailoring. Through extending the life of textiles, Old Flame Mending makes your pieces not only wearable and functional again, but also unique and beautiful. This mending duo is based in Pittsburgh, but they take mail-in mending orders from anywhere in the U.S. For more information, visit them at oldflamemending.com or follow them on Instagram at oldflamemending. Gabriella Antonis is a visual artist and an ethical trade fashion designer. But Gabriella is also a radical feminist micro-business. She's the one-woman band trying to help you understand why slow fashion is what the earth needs. The one-woman band to help you build your own brand. She can take your fashion line from just a concept and do your sketches, pattern making, grading, sourcing, cutting, and sewing. The second option is for those who aren't trying to start a business and who just want ethical garments. Gabriella Antonis will create custom made-to-measure garments just for you. Her goal is to help one person of any size at a time, including beyond size 40. To inquire about this serendipitous intersectional offering of either concept, DM her on Instagram to book a consultation. Please follow her on Instagram and Twitter at Gabriella Antonis. Dylan Page is an online clothing and lifestyle brand based out of St. Louis, Missouri. Our products are chosen with intention for the conscious community. Everything we carry is animal-friendly, ethically made, sustainably sourced, and cruelty-free. Dylan Page is for those who never stop questioning where something comes from. We know that personal experience dictates what's sustainable for you, and we are here to help guide and support you to make choices that fit your needs. Check us out at dylanpage.com and find us on Instagram at dylanpagelifeandstyle. Salt Hats, purveyors of truly sustainable hats, hand-blocked, sewn, and embellished in Detroit, Michigan. Find us on Instagram at Salt Hats. Karen Kinney Studio. Located in Western Massachusetts, Karen specializes in handcrafted earrings from found, upcycled, and repurposed fabrics, as well as other eco-friendly curios, all with a hint of nostalgia, a dollop of whimsy, a dash of color, and 100% fun. Karen is an artist/designer who believes the materials we use matter. See more on Instagram at Karen Kinney Studio or online at www.ckinney.com. Gentle Vibes Vintage. We are purveyors of polyester and psychedelic relics. We encourage experimentation and play not only in your wardrobe, but in your home too. We have thousands of killer vintage pieces ready for their next adventure. See them all on Instagram at Gentle Vibes Vintage. Thumbprint is Detroit's only fair trade marketplace located in the historic Eastern Market. Our small business specializes in products handmade by empowered women in South Africa, making a living wage, creating things they love like hand-painted candles and ceramics. We also carry a curated assortment of sustainable and natural locally made goods. Thumbprint is a great gift destination for both the special people in your life and for yourself. Browse our online store at thumbprintdetroit.com and find us on Instagram at thumbprintdetroit. Blank Cass, or Blanket Coats by Cass, is focused on restoring, renewing, and reviving the history held within vintage and heirloom textiles. By embodying the love, craft, and energy that is original to each vintage textile as I transfer it into a new garment, I hope we can reteach ourselves to care for and mend what we have and make it last. Blank Cass lives on Instagram at _Cass, and a website will be launched soon at blankcass.com. Located in Whistler, Canada, Velvet Underground is a velvet jungle full of vintage and secondhand clothing, plants, a vegan cafe, and lots of rad products from other small sustainable businesses. Our mission is to create a brand and community dedicated to promoting self-expression, as well as educating and inspiring a more sustainable and conscious lifestyle, both for the people and the planet. Find us on Instagram at shop_velvetunderground or online at www.shopvelvetunderground.com. St. Evens is a New York City-based vintage shop that is dedicated to bringing you those special pieces you'll reach for again and again. More than just a store, St. Evens is dedicated to sharing the stories and history behind the garments. 10% of all sales are donated to a different charitable organization each month. For the month of June, St. Evens is supporting Last Prisoner Project, which works to redress the harms of cannabis criminalization through legal intervention, education, and criminal justice reform advocacy. New vintage is released every Thursday at wearstevens.com with previews of new pieces and more, brought to you on Instagram at wear_st.evens. That's Wear St. Evens. Country Feedback is a mom-and-pop record shop in Tarboro, North Carolina. They specialize in used rock, country, and soul, and offer affordable vintage clothing and housewares. Do you have used records you want to sell? Country Feedback wants to buy them. Find us on Instagram at Country Feedback Vintage and Vinyl, or head down east and visit our brick and mortar. All are welcome at this inclusive and family-friendly record shop in the country. Welcome to Clotheshorse, the podcast that has eaten way too many weird salads in my lifetime. I probably ate a weird salad today. I'm your host, Amanda, and this is episode 81. And I'm so excited for you to meet today's super special guest, my friend, Jess. My original plan for this interview was that I would split it into 2 episodes, as I often do, but I just couldn't do it. It made way too much sense as a single episode, and I found myself just smiling and laughing the entire time I edited this conversation because I just love Jess so much, and you're going to feel the same way by the time you finish this episode, I promise. My conversation with Jess is a perfect pairing of Labor Month and Personal Style Month, which, we're observing over at clotheshorse.world. So I knew I had to get her on the podcast. But in order to know why I thought that, you'll have to listen to the episode. No spoilers here. You can wait 20 more seconds, right? I'm also just going to call out that we do talk about anti-fat bias and how it affects the fashion industry in the second half of the episode. So if that's something that's bad for your mental health, that ruins your day, you might want to skip that section. And that section starts after the blog promo. This is a long conversation, so I just want to jump right into it. With no further ado, let's meet Jess. Today, I'm excited to be joined by, gosh, Jess, I've known you for so long.
I know. How long? 10 years? No, more than that.
Well, more than
years?
that. Yeah, at least.
Oh my God. Wow.
I'm going to let Jess introduce herself, but I met Jess pretty early in my career in buying because she was working for a vendor that made shoes. And I was like, wow, this vendor is really annoying. But every time I'm in a meeting with them, I just want to talk to Jess. So it was like, hey, do you want to take this to the next level, outside of work?
Do you want to follow me on MySpace?
Yeah, exactly. And then, maybe write on each other's walls. Were they called walls then?
Right.
I don't know. And then maybe if we do that a couple times, then we can hang out in real life, which we did.
Yes.
So, Jess, why don't you tell everyone who you are?
I am Jess. Right now I am a mom
Which is a job.
and a content creator. And I'm just kind of trying to survive in this plus size fashion space. And I don't know. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
So I had been wanting to talk to you about coming on the pod anyway, to talk about being an influencer and the plus size style space, which is a whole conversation in itself. But then I realized that you've had, I don't know, anywhere from 9 to 1,000 different jobs.
I know. When you said this morning, you were like, I'm going to ask you how many jobs you had. And I started trying to do the mental gymnastics of trying to answer that. And I just gave up because it's so insane. It's absurd and kind of embarrassing. I don't talk about it a lot because it really makes me sound like I have commitment issues, which I don't.
I mean, no way. I think it makes it sound like you're a person who, like me, has a lot of curiosity about trying new things.
Yes.
And that's why I'm excited to talk to you. I was like, okay, well, we have to do this at the end of Labor Month. So it's a nice crossover between Labor Month and Personal Style Month, because you have tried so many different things. And I think most of us feel like we're locked into something for so long just because we've done it for a while, or that's what we went to school for. That's what our parents want us to do. That's what our friends do, whatever. Our job is so entangled in our personal identity, for better or worse. So
yes,
I think that says a lot about how complicated of a person you are, that you've tried all these different things. So I'm excited to talk to you about it, because you have stories,
Yeah. And I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head on why I have a hard time kind of talking about it, because I come from a family where both of my parents had the same job their whole lives. They never, my mom has had the same job for almost 40 years, I think the longest I spent in a job was maybe 3 years. Yeah, maybe 3 years. And that was when I was doing other jobs on top of it. I have a lot of overlap. I always say there's just not enough time for me to experience, there's not enough life for me. I need a couple more so I can try all the things.
I think you touched on something that's really important there, is that especially for our parents' generation, there's this idea that you pick a lane and you stay in it forever, even if you hate it.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
I know my mom always hated her job when I was growing up. She was an accountant. She hated it, but she was like, this is what I went to school for. So this is what I'm supposed to do. I like to think that our generation is starting to say yeah, fuck that. Do different stuff. You shouldn't do the same thing forever unless you love it. In that case, please have at it. But I had an interview a while back in the early part of the pandemic where it was a totally different industry. It wasn't fashion. It was a restaurant supply company. And the person interviewed me was like, wow, you kind of seem like you're a job hopper. And I'm like, really? Because I've only worked for 4 or 5 companies in my whole career. And she was like, yeah, but I mean, why would you move around like that? And I was like, well, that's how the industry works. You know, like you can't, in fashion at least, if you stay at with the same company forever, you're going to make less money and you're going to get promoted less often. That's the reality of it, right?
That's absolutely the reality. And I think in a lot of creative fields too.
Yeah.
You're constantly looking for the next. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's like an old timey attitude. So
yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning. When you were a kid, when you were in high school, I don't know, middle school, whenever, what did you think your job was going to be when you were an adult?
When I was in high school, I distinctly remember wanting to be a sculptor.
Okay, we're already off to a great start here.
I know. I was like, a kid that struggled like so many of us did with identity, with like figuring out where I belonged. And I was an art major in high school, which meant that like half of my day could be art classes. And I just loved working with my hands. Like I loved making things with my hands. And I thought, I want to do this. This is something that I think I can contribute. But then I decided to go into fashion, and I was just thinking about this recently. Like my foray into fashion is kind of like accidental. I wanted to make myself more marketable. I laugh so hard at that when I think about it. So like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into fashion. It makes sense, right?
Yeah,
so I decided to apply to college I went in for art schools, but also applied to fashion schools, specifically to the Fashion Institute because they had an accessories design program. And I thought, aren't accessories just sculptures? Like, isn't it three-dimensional art? I know. Silly Jess.
In its purest form. I mean, I think this is interesting already because this is pointing out something that I think is in the back of my mind a lot too, that if you're creative and like that you are somehow supposed to make a living off of that creativity, that a lot of people do get pushed into fashion because that is a commodification of creativity. Whereas like if you had just said, no, I'm going to school for sculpture, your parents would have been like, well, so like you're going to get a job at Starbucks when you're done,
right.
Or
what are you going to do with it? And they say that out of fear. Like I get that. But I think also, I always say I got into fashion accidentally, and that's just one place where I got into fashion accidentally. I was a plus size person, even at my thinnest. And I remember like not being able to find clothes, and I found Jenkos, right?
Yeah.
Jenkos. And I was like, suddenly like, oh, I'm in the raver culture. And because I found pants that fit me, like,
right,
like what?
Right.
And so like, then I was like, oh, I have these pants that fit me. So now I identify as something because of my fashion. So now all of a sudden I had a stake in fashion, and I never really had before. And I think a lot of, we could talk about that later, but I think a lot of plus size people feel that way. You don't have a stake in fashion. So I had a stake in fashion. I wanted to be a sculptor. I wanted to make myself more marketable. Hence, I go into footwear design. And I have to say like that, like I was right that I could go to school for accessories design and it would be like sculpture. But then once you're out of fashion school and you're not actually making everything by hand, like it's a very different career than what you envisioned for yourself, because you're sitting at a computer all day talking to buyers, talking to manufacturers, and it's not as creative of a career as you thought it would be. All that stuff happens overseas, at least for us, in some kind of manufacturing facility.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's true.
So
it's more meetings and emails than anything else.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I always said like you tell people like, oh, because I was a footwear designer, and I would tell people that, and they envision like somebody in a movie that's very glamorous, and they're a footwear designer. I'm like, yeah, I guess, but that's like maybe 5% of the job is that fun, creative part where you're shopping the market and you're trend forecasting and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's mostly like bad lunches and like a lot of weird salads. I feel like
a lot of weird salads. Wow.
Why do we eat so many weird salads?
Somebody should do a case study on this. It's so true. And like walking around like really sad, like industrial parks. I don't know.
Yeah. And just
on your lunch break.
And just being like tired, you know.
Just being tired under fluorescent lights. And,
yeah, totally.
Anyway. It's very different from what you envision. But I do have to say, I met some of the coolest people ever. You are one of them, just by being in this industry. So there's that. But I'm definitely an expatriate, as far as the fashion industry goes, I guess.
It's true that in my career, I have met some of the raddest, smartest, interesting people ever. And I've also met some of the just most terrible people ever. So
I agree with that.
It's
absolutely.
But I think that's important to call out is that I worked with a lot of really horrible people. I worked for a lot of really horrible people, but I also worked with lots of really rad people that kept me coming to work and staying engaged, and I'm still friends with them.
For sure. And so many of the people that I met at the place where we worked together, eventually we worked together.
Yes.
I'm still in touch with some of these people, and some of them are doing really effing cool things now, so
agreed.
There's hope for us yet.
Agreed. There really is. So, okay. So I'm skipping my question where I ask you how many jobs I think you've had because we don't know. Maybe
I'm going to say I can't count it on two hands.
Okay.
So let's just leave it at that.
That sounds right to me. Okay. So how about this? What was your favorite job?
My favorite job was hands down when I was a teacher in the Philly school district.
My gosh, I remember that. And wait a minute. Wasn't that at the same time they were filming some sort of Tony Danza reality show?
Oh my gosh. What was it called? Oh, I can't believe you remember that, but you have such a good memory.
I mean, it could have.
It was Tony Danza.
I'm Googling it right now.
And it was called Schooled? No. Teach. That's what it was called.
That could have been better.
And he actually taught in the same district that I did. I taught in the upper Northeast. Still considered Philly, but almost not. It was right on the border. And he taught at a school right near mine. And I had to go through all these training programs in the summer where he was there. And he'd always have his people with him. And I have to say, I only watched a couple episodes, but I think he did a pretty good job. Teaching is really hard.
Yeah, it seems so. I just did some speed reading about it. He did not have teaching certification when he began. And so in the beginning, he had to have a co-teacher there. But it says that he got his teaching accreditation and taught the second semester without the co-teacher.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I do have to say, too, he went through everything you were supposed to do. The Philly school district had all of these courses you had to take, all of these certifications you had to take, which I agree with. I think you should have them. And he did not. He went and did them all. So that's pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool. And we would be sitting in some hot cafeteria in the summer sweating and eating these weird sandwiches that they gave us. And there was Tony Danza right there with us, no problem.
I love
pretty
that.
Cool.
I think
it was pretty cool.
Dude. Yeah.
I've never been a Tony Danza fan. I'm not whatever. I'm not yay, Tony Danza now. But I was just that was my closest, one of my closest interactions with a celebrity. And I'm happy with it.
I think that's a good one.
I'll allow it.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make it clear for anyone listening that I also am not a Tony Danza fan per se. I'm not a Tony Danza anti-fan either.
I kind of nothing him, right?
Yeah,
you kind of nothing him.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's fine.
I don't think about him a lot. This is the first time I've talked about him probably since you took the teaching job, Jess.
Yes. Well, I'm glad we could bring him back for a minute.
Yeah, just have that moment. Why was teaching your favorite job?
So it's funny. I decided to go into teaching because I was kind of floundering around at the time, and I was about to get married. I knew I wanted to have kids, and I was trying to make myself feel more secure. in my career.
Yeah.
So I was like teaching, my sister's a teacher. I liked her schedule. I thought it seemed like a good thing for me. I would always go in for career day and talk at her school. And I just like loved it. I thought, that's like the irony of that is really funny. But, so I was actually hired. I was a Philly teaching fellow. So that's where you can go into teaching and they'll, put you through the schooling that you need to become a teacher in the classroom. And it's usually at high risk schools, or that's what it was called at the time, high risk, where they were having a hard time hiring people. Mm-hmm. So I was actually, they usually place you at schools, but I was actually selected by the principal at the school where I worked because it was a big sports school. So kids would come to go to that school because there were a lot of professional athletes that came out of it, specifically like their football and their basketball programs. And they felt like those programs were more geared toward like male students. Mm-hmm. So she thought, I want to start a fashion kind of program here. And so she saw that on my resume, and because she thought it would be something, eye roll that the girls could be a part of.
Right.
That's problematic. I know how problematic that is. But anyway, that's what she told me. And I was like, yes, I will do it. And, but the only way that I could do it was if I, also could teach a core subject.
Okay.
And I always loved science. So whenever I had, like an elective to take in college, it was usually a science class. And unbeknownst to me, I had built up like so many science credits that automatically I could be certified as a science teacher.
Wow.
No, I didn't even realize at the time. And she's like, I looked at, cause I guess she had my, all my college courses or whatever. And, she's like, I looked at it and I think that you'd be really great if you went and you taught science, which I was like, yes. So I taught half the day fashion design and half the day biology, physics, and, environmental science.
This sounds so fun to me.
It was very fun. It was hard because I had a lot of different, classes to teach throughout the day. So like preparing for those classes was really hard. I didn't have any resources at all. Like not a single sewing machine, like try to teach kids how to, do fashion design and you don't have a sewing machine. It was very hard. But it was also the same year that I got married. So I started teaching in September and I got married in October. I went away on my honeymoon, which, you don't usually go away in October as a teacher, but it was like one of those things they were like, we want you,
right.
We'll figure it out. It'll be fine. And I come back and as like a honeymoon gift to me, they had set up my whole classroom with like all the teachers had donated fabrics and like sewing machines and like thread and needles and like all this stuff. And I was like all set, but it took the teachers doing that. Like I had no funding whatsoever to do this. So our first fashion show, we made everything out of, like recycled materials. So the kids would bring in, I wish I have pictures of it somewhere because the stuff that they came up with was amazing. And I would teach them real fabric techniques, but we would just use it with, newspapers and magazines and tissue paper and, other things like that. It was unbelievably cool.
That sounds amazing.
It was amazing. It was a very Project Runway moment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But, like they had this chance to be really creative and, it was awesome. It was awesome to be a part of that.
And so why did you stop doing that?
I stopped doing that because I was cut. My job was cut. I don't know if you remember, but it was probably 2008. Yeah, somewhere around there. No, 2009 or 10. Philly cut 4,000 of its teachers' jobs.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, and because of my seniority, my job was cut. And I thought that I was just like laid off and that's it. And I was what they called forced transferred. So teachers that had more seniority once more spaces opened back up, could choose to go to the school they wanted to. And so somebody else took my space of the place I was teaching, which was so sad to me. Like, I loved that school. And I was forced transferred to Bach School in South Philly, which I don't know if you know about Bach School, but it closed the year after I taught there. I come in like a wrecking ball. Like, I just feel like don't hire me. Like, guys, like, don't hire me.
If you want your business to stay open. Yeah.
But anyway, so now Bach is a maker space, and there's a bar there, and there's, I think there's a restaurant. I've actually never been there, but when they were, showing all the classrooms, when they were redoing the place for the maker space, my classroom that I had taught in was there, and it was like the bulletin board fabric I'd put up on my bulletin boards was still there. It was very creepy.
Wow.
Very, very creepy.
Weird.
Yeah, because that same year, like, tons of Philly schools were completely abandoned. I'm not even sure what the state of them are now, now just like that one, but the Bach School I know has, thrived. I'm not sure if people in the neighborhood would say that because they were very much against it, but
yeah. Well, I wonder where your kids go to school now.
Yeah, the kids, Philly is like a choice district, so kids could go anywhere in the whole city. It's just, if that's your neighborhood school, you have to go somewhere further away.
Yeah.
Which I think it would be South Philly High, which is, Bach was it was a technical school. You had to get into it. So I'm sure it was a nightmare for a lot of people. That was the same year I had my first child too.
Jeez.
So yeah, I know. So I, I kind of like welcomed leaving there because, I wasn't teaching fashion design there. I was just teaching science. I talked to them about what I did at my former school, and nobody wanted to hear it. It was just,
Yeah.
And there were fights all the time, and the security guards were like these little old ladies, and I just didn't feel. I know, and like my former school, the security guards were like this, this force, and they de-escalated with these kids, and it was really like they were well known for like doing a really good job. So I was like, now that somebody's relying on me and I have this baby, I can't go back to this.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So that was it for me. I mean, I have thought about going back to teaching no less than 3 million times since, but it's a really hard time to be a teacher.
Yeah. This is not
really
the time.
is.
Yeah.
This is not the time, not even the pandemic. I just mean like what we expect from teachers is just so absurd considering what they're paid. And
exactly.
It's just, it's insane. So I don't know. I don't know what lies next for me. We'll see.
Well, so what was your worst job?
My worst job was, I'm sure there are a couple.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the job that I worked with you.
I kind of had a feeling. So we're not going to name
of
company,
course not. Of course not.
We both worked. Well, I was working there when I met Jess for a very large fast fashion company, and I was working in buying. And you were working in. You joined the company later. Was it site merchandising? Is that what
it was? Yes, it was online merchandising.
And what's interesting about that time specifically, Jess, is I remember, like, within a year of before you had started, our website was so shitty that it would frequently just go down for a weekend, and we would miss like major sales. And we were a massive corporation with hundreds of stores.
I can't tell you how many times I've talked about this very thing with people. Because I think if you live in the area that we're in, I don't want to give it away, but like you kind of like my goal was to work there.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to work there. I thought it sounded beautiful and like dreamy, and I'd wake up every day and just like love going to work. But I show up on the first day, and they give me first of all, I had no merchandising experience whatsoever. I had a lot of different fashion experience. I worked in fashion PR before that. I worked in design before that, and even manufacturing. But I go in having done no merchandising whatsoever, and they give me the largest collection, which was women's wear.
Oh my God.
And like, here you go. And they were like, but you have to do intake, which means like we have to account for like what came in so we know what is available to upload it to say like we have this many of this item.
This is
for
crazy.
People who are, and it was and the program was in DOS. So it was like tab, 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 F1, F2, tab, tab, and this was like DOS had been gone for like a decade at this point. And I'm like, what? This is a very large organization and we're still working in DOS?
Yeah.
And it was just totally insane. I was just very surprised. And that was like red flag number one.
Yeah. I mean, I assume by now their website has changed considerably.
I'm sure.
Willing,
yeah.
When I initially joined the buying team, we had a separate buying team for online because that was just like at that point, it was like, yeah, it seems like people want to buy stuff on the internet, but like not a lot of people want to buy stuff on the internet. Now, of course, it's totally the opposite, right? Like,
right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
maybe people want to shop in stores now, but mostly they want to shop on the internet. And so at one point, and I want to say it was before you joined the team, they were like, okay, this is not working, having separate buying teams for the two different places you can shop. And also, they probably wanted to save money. Let's be real. So they not got rid of the online buying team, but they folded them into other parts of the company and then had us buy both stuff for stores and online. And I remember being trained on the programs that all of you were using for the website and being like, wait, what? Why is this so terrible?
It was terrible. And nobody trained, nobody really trained me. And I was very lucky because the group that I was working with I didn't get along great with the manager, but the other people that worked in my department on the other collections, like the accessories or the menswear or the housewares, were so great. And they just kind of like, come here, like, let me show you how to do it kind of thing. And that's how I learned, which is like, and I remember I would go in at like 7 a.m. Sometimes I couldn't even get in. There was nobody there yet because I wanted to make sure I did that like whole intake, whatever, and get it over with so I could actually do my job. So that was very hard.
Yeah.
But also the whole, like you had mentioned, like the whole program would crash.
Constantly.
We couldn't do anything.
Constantly. It would
and
not,
so like, do you remember like we could just like ride around on the campus?
Yeah.
And so we would just like ride around and like, it was awesome. Like that part of it was awesome. I made great friends doing that and it was fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
But the actual job itself was really hard. And then, buyers would always fight for, top billing. And I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like, why are you mad at me? Why are you fighting? Like, why is this happening? It was like a lot of lack of communication and a lot of ego, which I think, happens a lot in, huge companies.
It was and is very competitive there, where it's not like how it felt different for me. My previous jobs, for the most part, had been either in like the nonprofit space or working retail, where it's kind of like, we're all in this together, it's us against the world, right? And then I went there and it was like, oh no, it's all of us against one another. It's like Hunger Games every day.
It really was like Hunger Games.
Yeah.
It really was.
And so like you're competing with every single person around you. So there's not a sense of like team at all, just like frenemies kind of. You and I had something in common about our beginnings at that company, which is that our bosses never spoke to us, which I think is a really interesting management technique, and really haven't experienced since then, but was very, very stressful, I guess, for me when I began, where I would sit, I sat about 10 feet away from my manager, and she never spoke to me. She just emailed me. And so I would go a whole day without speaking to another human sometimes.
My manager there worked directly behind me. So
I can picture
there
it.
were points in the day where we were less than 48 inches away from each other. And she would hit me up on the messenger thing that like the same time or whatever it was that we had. But it wasn't just like I can understand that if you're telling somebody something technical and you want them to have it in writing so they understand. But it was just like a couple of times, like I remember when I gave my notice and like despite everything, she really liked me. Like I think she saw me kind of as a friend.
What?
And I know. And I think outside of there, she probably was a great person. It was just like her management style didn't work for me. But she'd be like, I remember her writing to me being like, I'm really sad you're leaving. Like, just turn around and tell me I'm right here.
I know.
I like talking. Like, it's just like, just talk to me. Like, really? What are you doing? What are you doing over there?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that company did not and still continues to not have an HR department. So
Right.
there isn't a lot of training and mentoring in the first place. So if you're a manager there, you've never had the opportunity to learn how to be a good one.
Yes.
And so you might think that it's okay
Agreed.
to just chat your direct report all day.
Right. And she was younger than me. It was her first job out of college. Like it was, it was tricky, but I think you're right though. Like the culture of the company is everything. And from the outside looking at that company, it seems like this really great culture, like of all these very creative people, and it's a beautiful atmosphere there. And and then you get in there and you're like, oh my gosh, I fell for it.
Yeah.
I fell for the marketing.
Yes. Not only did I leave that company finally, I went back. I was like, why did I do this? I know what this place is. You can, when you've been there, you can walk into an environment like that and feel it right away.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, nothing has changed. Wow, I'm so stupid.
No.
Anyway.
Well, I think like you want to think the best, and you want to think like the people there have changed because the turnover there is insane.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's just really insane, which is like that's a whole other topic. Like, idea. There you go. There's a new topic for you.
I think turnover is really interesting because I've worked some places. Like when I worked at Nasty Gal, it was such a horrible place to work. Even though lots of awesome people worked there, like all the people who actually did the work were super rad, but everybody who was like in a leadership role was horrible. And so it was a really toxic environment because of that. And so every week, I swear to God, every Friday there'd be 2 going away parties. Someone like there was so much champagne and cupcakes and strawberries going around that office on Fridays.
So like that is comedy gold.
It is.
Right
it's like I was talking to another friend and they were like, I don't even like cupcakes anymore because I had so many
cupcakes for me
from all the people leaving. And like, so the turnover there was because it was a terrible place to work. The turnover at the company that we're talking about is twofold because one, it's a pretty terrible place to work that doesn't pay well and treats you like crap. But also, if you stick around long enough, they're going to push you out anyway. Like they want the turnover. And whereas at like Nasty Gal, no one was ever there long enough to get forced out.
Yeah. Why do you think that's interesting? Why do you think they want the turnover? I never even considered that.
I think part of it is financial, right? It's cheaper to pay people with less experience, right?
Oh, right. Here, I'm thinking it's expensive to retrain somebody and to do all that, but they don't do that.
Exactly. It's just another body.
Wow.
And I think also the other thing when we're talking about like more youth-oriented brands, if you will, is that there's this concern. I mean, it's ageism, right? It's
right. It's absolutely ageism.
You're like 35 now, so you probably aren't cool anymore.
My God. Yeah.
Yeah.
And nothing ever changes when you do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and nothing ever gets better because, I mean, it's not, I'm not trying to defend all us old folks over here, but like
back in my day,
but we've seen why certain things are a bad strategy, why they don't work out.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with like trends or age or anything like that. But if you've if you're at the beginning of your career, you have less experience, you don't know why it's a bad idea to do XYZ because you haven't seen it play out.
Absolutely. But also, you're like, I'm just going to give it a try and maybe I can change it.
Yeah.
Maybe I can make people happy because I'm a very happy person. Maybe I can change the entire culture of the entire company.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always have had that attitude like, well, it's just like what you make of it. And then like in retrospect, I'm like, that's putting way too much responsibility on myself for something I can't fix.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is good advice to anyone listening, that if you have a job and it's a sucky, toxic environment, it's not your fault.
No.
Move on.
No, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
you're so right. And I wish somebody had told me that.
Me too.
It would have saved me a lot of heartache.
Even honestly, when I was interviewing for Nasty Gal, there have been several exposés at this point about how it was a toxic environment and the Glassdoor reviews were a nightmare. And I said to myself, yeah, but I'm different. This will be different for me. And then I got there and I was like, oh my God, I'm eating my lunch in the bathroom because everyone's so mean.
Oh my God. No.
I know.
Oh, that's terrible.
So that's like just life advice from us for free. Just
there
quit.
It is.
Do something else. You're not going to change it.
No.
So did you ever feel like in any of your jobs, did you feel kind of disposable and easily replaceable? Because, I mean, this is something we talk about a lot when I talk to other people who've worked in the fashion industry specifically, that you always feel like if you don't like it, it's your problem and you'll be replaced in 5 seconds. So, like, who cares? Like, you have someone's dream job, so better just suck it up and learn to like it. But I hear this from other people as well, like in other industries who are like, I feel like no one cares if I'm replaced by someone else tomorrow. It's that easy. I have no leverage here because someone else will step right in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the significant amount of like job hopping, we'll call it, that I did, also I never got to the next level because I was never there long enough. So I was always at that disposable level. And I think that's a part of it too, and I changed course many times because of layoffs. Sometimes had nothing to do with my own decision making.
Oh yeah, same for me.
And so because of that, like I talked about when I was a teacher and how there were teacher layoffs, and I hadn't been there long enough. Forget that, like my test scores were great and my kids were doing, my students were doing great. Like forget it, it doesn't matter. You haven't been here long enough, so you get the old boot. So I was always at that, and I think like as a creative too. It's like, when I was a footwear designer, I was the creative department, like almost single-handedly. And it's like, okay, well, we'll just keep all of the business people. And this was during 2008 economic collapse. You're the first to go, but we'll bring you back as soon as we can,
But for half the money. That's something I've been seeing right now. I belong to a lot of different groups that are, organizing around unemployment and issues with jobs right now. And a recurring story is people who were laid off due to the pandemic, their bosses, their employers coming back to them and saying, hey, listen, you can come back, but you're going to take a 30% pay cut. And it's like, wait, what?
That's like, opportunistic.
I know. Would you take that offer if you could get your laptop?
Would I?
Yeah.
I don't think so, but that's my privilege.
Right,
I don't have to,
Yeah.
But if I had to, absolutely, I probably would.
Exactly.
I mean, like we're still riding on this unemployment, train, but it's gonna end. Like I'm just like, I've been thinking about September when like unemployment benefits are going to drop off, like, and it's going to be Lord of the Flies. Hot take.
No, I'm really frightened about it because there just aren't enough jobs out there right now.
I'm very frightened about it. And I feel like the numbers they're showing, the jobs and like all this talk of like, but nobody wants to work. We're having a hard time. Nobody wants to work. Well, it's going to change pretty fast. So
yeah. No,
I don't know.
There are like, for all of this, like no one will come in our work in my restaurant or my McDonald's talk that I see. The reality is that there just aren't enough jobs out there anyway. And I also, I know that we are not supposed to expect that the world is fair or just, and we are supposed to just take what we're given. But it seems incredibly unfair and unrealistic to expect someone who maybe was making $50,000 before, $100,000 a year, whatever, to now go work at Taco Bell.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's okay, and I don't think that's a reason to cut off unemployment benefits.
Of course not. I mean, I'm also lucky because when I was working before the pandemic, I worked for a great company who really valued us. And I don't think that they would do that. I mean, things have changed for them. They're not really in a position to hire everybody back right now. They're trying. But they are a business that decided when we open, we want to pay our employees fairly. So we can't bring back people unless we can pay them fairly. So they're just not open as much. They're only open 2 days a week versus 7 days a week.
And I think that's okay.
I'm sorry, 6 days a week.
That's okay.
I think it's okay. And they're just making it work. And I respect that. But then there's all these like, we want people to come and work and they're not working, but we only pay $3.25 an hour. And then they can make a lot in tips, you know?
Maybe.
It's just like maybe, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can't. It's just like I feel like I would always be chased if I had a job like that.
I would be so
to make
stressed
ends
out.
meet. Yeah, it's just so stressful. So anyway,
in what job did you feel the most appreciated? Like you were valuable, and everybody would do anything they could to make sure you were having a good experience there.
I think that was when I was teaching at my first school, because I had a really great supervisor and I had a team that I worked with, like all these other teachers. The first year that I worked there, they put us into these groups so that we could have, kind of like brainstorming sessions. And we all had, similar students. So we could talk about those students and how we could serve them the best. I thought that was great. But then after I left education and had my first child, I started my own company, and I did like kids cooking classes, and I ran summer camps for kids. I did like a farm to fork for kids, where we went to a farm and they would go and they would pick all the ingredients and we'd make recipes and stuff. And it was during the summer, and I hired all teachers to be my counselors with me. And I mean, and that was just like an unbelievable experience. So both of those jobs, but I think the farm to fork and all the cooking classes and all, I had control over it. So that's probably why I liked it. And it was something that my community really like embraced. And, it just was, I got a lot of support, and, so that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a perfect job for you, actually.
It was great. Yeah, it was really great. Then I had my second child. I did it until I had my second child. And then it was just like, it was too much.
Yeah.
It was really hard work. And when I broke down what I made versus the amount of time that I was spending on it, and the amount of time I had to like kind of take away from my kids because I had to plan for it and like, drag everything out into a field so that kids could make salsa out of the stuff they picked. It was just like, I can't do it. It doesn't make sense for me anymore. So I do miss it. Every summer comes along and I'm like, another summer without time at the farm, and it was like, it started at age 4. It was like age 4 to 13. And I really started that program for my daughter, who loved going whenever we would go to farms, and they would take care of the animals, and it was magical. They would pick a bouquet of flowers every week and we'd make a bouquet to bring home. And it was wonderful. It really was.
Yeah,
that was my dream.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Do you think you might want to do that again?
I don't know. The other thing that happened, I got in. I had this idea. A friend of mine and I were talking one day about summer camps. My daughter was 3 at the time, my first daughter, and I was like, I really wish that they had this. And she's like, why don't you do it then? I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess I will.
Yeah.
And I just heard about the CSA farm that had opened, and it was completely organic, although they didn't have the certification yet, because there's this, like, in New Jersey, there's this like 3-year thing that you have to go through. But they were growing everything organically. The farm had been abandoned for like 10 years. They redid the whole, they brought it back to its original grandeur. This family, they lived there. They were farming the land. It was beautiful. And they were like, of course we want you to have your camp here. It's awesome. Like, please have it here. And we did that with them for about 3 years. And then they sold the farm to another family who decided to turn it into a wedding venue. So, yeah. So in a perfect world, I would probably still be doing it, because my partnership with them was so great and they were so wonderful. But then the wedding family came along and really were not happy with us being there. No, my vision did not suit their brand.
God, what a bummer.
It was a bummer. It really was. But just goes to show, like, having a wedding, like, there is more lucrative to them than having a CSA and growing food. There's a tale to be told in that whole story.
I mean,
anyway, we won't go into it.
That's the wedding industrial complex right there.
Yeah.
That is interesting though. Like, thinking about you, like, stepping away from it because you had a second kid and it was just too much. This is not something I was planning on talking about, but it's been on my mind and I've been wanting to talk to someone about, is this whole idea. And I'm going to preface this by saying that I hate this term. It's been coined by, I guess, the media, but I hate it. And I'd love for us to rebrand it. The she-session that we're in right now. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
Well, first off, we got to rebrand it. So maybe when I explain what it is, you'll be like, oh, I have a cuter name. So roll off the tongue, right? So basically it's this idea. Well, I mean, it's indicated by statistics that the recession that's been created by the pandemic specifically has affected women and women of color, even more specifically, more than anyone else in the United States. So in April, I want to say that the country added about 260,000 new jobs, which was very disappointing. Economists had been targeting 1 million. So that was already bummer news. But even crazier about that is all those jobs went to men.
Oh, my God. It's like I'd be disappointed if I just wasn't, like, obviously.
Yeah, I know, right? You're like, of course it did, right? It's like, are we in a time? Did we suddenly hop in a time machine? Is this like the 80s? Is this the 60s? No, this is happening right now. And so many women left the workforce for a wide array of reasons during the pandemic, because their children weren't going to school, because they had to care for someone else in their home, because they lived with other people who were at risk and didn't want to expose them by going out to their jobs, or because they were just straight up laid off, right? And specifically, women have been really intensely impacted by this. I was doing some other reading about how women 35 and up are particularly fucked right now, pardon my French, because no one wants to pay for their experience to bring them back to work. So they're being replaced by less expensive, less experienced people in their previous jobs. And they might, and they can't like go get a McDonald's job and support their families or themselves.
Right. But also if you're talking about these women, not all of these people in this group are mothers, but if you are, I think that there's a stigma to hiring mothers because
for sure.
What if you have to leave because your kid gets sick or whatever? I've had to leave because my kid got sick.
Oh,
it's just like I worked for a female-owned business that was owned by mothers, so it was like fine. They were like, "Oh, please, like go." But I think for the majority, like that's that there's a risk. They see it as a risk.
Oh, definitely.
Of hiring mothers, whereas they should see it as there are great benefits because you don't want to lose your job because you got a family to support,
And so you're going to keep working really hard.
So on and so forth.
I agree that you're going to be more engaged because you need that job. It takes me back to when I was working retail and I was a department manager, and there was an epidemic of head lice at Dylan's daycare. And I mean, it was like,
oh my God.
As fast as we would get the head lice out of our home, they would come back again. Because you know how it is. It's like one kid, another kid, and it just keeps coming around. And,
we've all been through that. Yes.
Yes. No. And you also know that, like, if your kid has head lice, they can't be at daycare. They have to be sent home. And so I would get these calls at work like, hey, you have to come and pick up Dylan. The head lice is back. And I remember specifically the store merchandiser that I was working with, who would have been like, a superior to me, finally being like, I feel like you don't care about this job because you're always leaving to go deal with Dylan's head lice. And I was like, this is a really like out of my control situation, the kind of situation that you have when you have children. It has nothing to do with me or anything I'm doing. And she was basically like, you need to get it together and
Oh
make
my
sure this doesn't
gosh.
happen again. And that was terrifying for me.
It's like, and it's a common tale
It is
that
a
I've
common
heard
tale.
told.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard told. And not even just children. Like, what if you have a health condition and you have to go?
Yeah.
I remember at the job where we worked together, I was dealing with some weird mystery illness that would make it so I couldn't open my right eye all the way.
Oh my God.
And I don't know if you remember this. I didn't talk a lot about it because I was just so stressed out about it. And like the only time I could go to my doctor was during the day, and I'd take these long lunch breaks and I'd have to drive over the bridge and like try to get it all in an hour. And if I was waiting in the doctor's office to see the doctor, like I would be so stressed out the whole time, and I'd ride back. And my manager said something to me too. She's like, you just can't take office time to go and go to the doctor.
That is
I'm like,
ridiculous.
okay, but I have to do my job, which requires my eyes to be working, like functioning properly.
Yeah. I mean,
oh my God.
I've been down this road too, where I was dealing with a health issue that was requiring a lot of testing, and like, I mean, you don't get to control when these things happen. And if you need an ultrasound, you're going to go when they say you can. And my boss also was like, it just seems like you've been going to the doctor a lot lately. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually really terrified that I might have cancer.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, okay, well, but
don't let it affect your job performance.
Yeah, we're here for you, but like, please don't take more time off.
Right. Oh, it's insane.
Yeah,
it's so insane. It's so insane when you sit, like, when you don't really think about it too hard when you're in the thick of it. But man, it's so insane.
I know. I still think about a manager giving me a hard time because my child keeps catching head lice. Listen, it was a nightmare for me. Okay,
yeah, it's a nightmare. But also, do they really want you there with the head lice?
I know.
Like, what about that part of it?
Yeah, no one was thinking about that. I remember that same job we had a scabies outbreak, not affiliated with me or my child. It was something to do with people in their in the locker room, but it was like a similarly like someone was expressing frustration that people couldn't work because they had scabies, and I was like, yeah, I feel like this is a good reason.
Yeah.
So
it's just like, oh, the goddamn bottom line. Jeez.
Dude, I can't even imagine. I mean, obviously, I lost my job early in the pandemic. I know you did too. I can't imagine working through it and having to deal with the nonstop terror and anxiety that someone in your home is going to get sick, and then you might not be able to work either. I mean, I have so much empathy for everyone who has had to deal with that and keep going. I mean, what a traumatic day-to-day experience.
Yes. I think it'll be interesting to see all of the trauma that all people will hold on to because of this in different ways. But, going back to the whole being a parent during this, specifically being a mother during this, we're the ones that have that invisible burden of being the caregiver, no matter what it all costs.
No matter.
Right?
No matter.
Even if you're the breadwinner, even if your job is, super, super intense and whatever, it still falls on us. And we have to do a perfect job at both. Right. And where was I going with this? Oh, when the pandemic happened and I had friends that were, teachers or were working from home and had their kids at home with them. Like even bringing in somebody for childcare was such an unbelievable risk to your family, because you had to, it was impossible to know what they were doing. I mean, you could ask, but even them going to the store presented a risk. So it was just like, I don't know. I just remember my next door neighbors who both worked full time at really stressful jobs, having 2 young kids, both under the age of 6, home, and not feeling comfortable bringing anybody in. And it just, anyway.
Yeah.
We can do anything. We got through this.
Yeah. And so I think it'll be interesting. I mean, not even interesting. I feel very concerned that we are about to travel back in time economically, specifically for women.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I don't think a lot. I mean, I know I'm not getting my career back, and I have talked to other women who feel similarly. I actually was speaking to a reporter a while back about different unemployment experiences, conversations she'd been having with people. And she was saying, a lot of people are just like, well, I'm never going to have a job again, so I'm going to start my own business.
Yeah. I mean, that actually, when you said that crossed my mind. I'm like, we're all just going to have to start our own thing.
Yeah, which I'm kind of excited about.
It's exciting, but it's like that. There's also like a lot of privilege in that.
It's true.
In order to be able to do that is like, wow, like the obstacles to that are just wow. But,
yeah, absolutely. If you're a woman, especially if you're a woman of color, even more so.
Oh gosh,
if
even
you
more
are
so.
a woman with children, maybe, and if you're like a single parent, I mean, this is a scary situation for me. And I feel like I was relatively unscathed by the Great Recession because I was so entry level that like I practically worked for free anyway. So no one thought about cutting me.
Yeah.
But I also can see how that long term impacted my career because I probably would have ended up being like president somewhere of a company if I hadn't been in the midst, working through the midst of a wage and promotion freeze for so long.
Right. And if you were the CEO of that company, the freaking culture would change and they'd start slowing down their fashion and, and they'd actually make clothes for fat people. Like, come on.
Well, that's actually a great transition into what you're doing right now.
Hi, this is Carrie, executive editor of clotheshorse.world, here with a quick update on what's happening on the blog. Our theme this month is personal style, how you define it and incorporate it into your daily life. This week, we have lots of practical advice for your reading pleasure. Kicking things off on Monday, Alex, our vintage detective, gives us a very thorough guide to thrifting like a pro. On Tuesday, Bethany shares the ingenious ways that she displays her clothes and accessories at home so that she can shop from her closet. So many great ideas. On Wednesday, Elise, our fantastic community outreach resident and proud outfit repeater, showcases a thrifted dress that she has worn year-round and all around the world. And finally, on Thursday, we have a report from Haley about her May sales results on Poshmark, Vinted, Mercari, and Depop. A reminder that July will be Body and Beauty Month on the blog, and we're interested in your thoughts about the wellness industry, how you've come to define beauty, and what you do to feel good in your body. The deadline to submit for this theme is June 19th, but we're happy to get submissions on any subject anytime. This platform is for you, and we're so impressed with the stories that we've been working on.
I'm calling you a style influencer. I heard you call yourself a content creator. I call myself a content creator too, which always makes me feel like I'm some cool like Gen Z on TikTok.
It's just so it rolls off your tongue, content creator. No, I mean I don't consider myself an influencer, and it's not for any like any hip reason. It's more just because I don't have like a ton of followers, and I kind of started this as just a hobby. So I loved my job. Before the pandemic, I was working at a cafe in the town where I lived. I walked to work. It was female owned, female run.
Oh, sounds amazing.
It was like, I have chills even talking about it. I loved working at this place. I was working as a cook, as a vegan cook. And I had worked as a vegan cook for a bunch of other places and was still working for other places at the time. But I came in, they were like, give us whatever. Like make a vegan menu for us. This is what we've been wanting. So they gave me full autonomy, and just like amazing people to work with, super open-minded. Like it was great. It became a huge part of my identity, as it does. And I think like that's a kind of a problem for me, but I think it's something that a lot of people do. So this is my identity. And the pandemic came and fucking shit on my dreams. As it did for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's going to be a couple weeks, like we all did.
Right.
You know, I'm a Pollyanna.
Gone by Easter.
Exactly. It'll be fine. We got this. And even like my bosses were like, we got this. This is what you got to do. They ended up just running the company themselves, the two of them. They had to lay off everyone, which I think was pretty fair the way they did it. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly I was thrust into this, like, who am I? Yet again. I'm like, freaking, do I have to reinvent myself again? Like, I'm tired. I need to figure out who I am for once.
Right.
Anyway, So I was like, how am I gonna, I think like my job kind of helped with my mental health. I deal, with anxiety, depression, that kind of stuff. And it really kind of like helped me to kind of maintain this equilibrium that I needed. And suddenly I was kind of knocked off of my stilts, and I needed to figure out something to do. So both of my kids were home suddenly. One of them could do full remote schooling on a computer and was really good about it. She's in 3rd grade, so it was like, easy for her to do all that, which I was lucky and with that, because like a lot of people are just like, this is such a challenge. And then I had a preschooler who couldn't do remote. So I was suddenly her homeschooling teacher, and I ordered a homeschooling program, and I was like, I'm a homeschooler now. Which much love to homeschoolers. That is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh my God.
Ever.
I cannot even imagine.
It was insane. I tried to be this very like, I guess cottage core comes
on trend.
I tried to be this cottage core homeschooler, and we would pick flowers and we'd draw them and talk about them, and but it was freaking exhausting, and it was never ending. So anyway, I thought to myself, what can I do? Let me give myself a job. and I also wasn't getting dressed, and I wasn't taking care, I wasn't like brushing my hair some days. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give myself accountability. And how can I do it? I'm going to do what these plus size, influencers that I love, that are literally lifting me out of the ditch right now. I'm going to do what they do. Not because I want not to have a following or whatever, more just accountability to get up, put on a cute outfit, brush my hair, and post something, and I'll make sure that I do it. I think I said like 3 days a week. So I started doing that and not really thinking anything of it. And I started to make friends with people on there. Not only friends, but I started to make friends with the people that were so influential to me. And I couldn't believe how accessible these people were, and we're talking about things that I'd never talked about before with others. And it just turned into something. And now it's just, it's kind of like what I do. I don't know.
I mean,
there's a piece
love
of
that.
it that's a part of every day for me.
Yeah.
And it's, it's very creative, and it doesn't come without its challenges. There are definitely things about it that I don't like, that I'm trying to change. For example, I don't want to just be somebody out here selling things.
Right.
I think that happens, and that's not really what I want. But at the same time, I want people to know, I'm a plus size person. I've almost always been a plus size person, and you can dress a certain way. It's not that perfect, but if you dress a certain way, you feel a certain way, it's social currency, right? And it's about value and how you see yourself in the world. And I don't know. And it changed a lot of things for me. There's something to be said for purpose, right?
Yeah.
Having purpose and having somebody that's waiting for you and relying on you. I mean, you get that by being a parent, but it's it's different.
It is
having a job
yeah.
is a reprieve from being parenting. I think one can sometimes, I'm going to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Right.
I remember a quote of hers where she was like, well, I do both, and one is a reprieve from the other, and both make me better at the other.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, when Dylan was very young, no one would hire me because, like you said, no one wanted to hire someone with a kid because I wouldn't be available 365 days a year. Whether it's legal to discriminate against people who have children or not, it happens.
Mm-hmm. It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Oh, absolutely. They don't have to tell you why they didn't hire you. They could just say that you weren't a good fit.
Yeah. And then you're like, okay, cool. Yeah. And so I could not find a job for a very long time. And it was hard to just parent 24 hours a day. The only person I was seeing was a toddler. And just that wasn't my happy place. I know for a lot of people it is, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that's great. But I also have always said, when it comes to parenting, and I know we're trying to change gears here, but just as an aside, I always said, we're doing it wrong. with parenting. We're doing it wrong. We're sitting in our little houses with our little child, and we're their world and they're ours. And this is just not how humans are supposed to be. We're supposed to be in a tribe somewhere, and all the kids are supposed to be raising themselves with each other.
Yeah.
Like all the other adults are the parent figure to all the kids. And, and I kind of I kind of built that in my community. I was very lucky, but I think that's rare.
Definitely. Definitely.
So anyway, we're doing it wrong.
We are,
as we are many things.
We are. But yeah, I think it's really cool that this misery of the pandemic, of kind of losing your sense of purpose, gave you a new one. Because that's what happened for me. It was like, finally, I have a mission again.
Yeah.
And I hope that we're going to see a lot of people doing cool stuff. I mean, I already am. So many people have started businesses because they were like, I have to do something. And I think this could be a sea change. So have you been approached by brands to do partnerships or anything like that?
All the time, yes.
All the time. That's what I thought. And so because you come from a unique background, not that you've had 900 jobs, but that you've worked in the industry and you know how shitty it can be, right?
I do. Yeah.
Does that make it harder to figure out who you want to work with, or to just think about partnering with some of these brands at all?
It does, because it's complicated. So on the one hand, I don't want to just sell things to people.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I want people to know that these options are out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it a sticky wicket, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have turned down brands, but I don't do it very often.
Mm-hmm. And why have you turned them down?
I have turned down brands that were very fast fashion.
Okay. I mean, that's great.
I'm not going to name names.
That's
you
fine.
can go ahead and take your guesses as to what those would be. But those are the ones that, like, I mean, I haven't done a ton of research in like exploitation and, and stealing creative ideas and that kind of thing. So when the news of those things reaches me, I try to read it and take it into account when I make my own decisions about what I buy. And in this case, about who I work with. Mm-hmm. In that case, I was like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But I think like a lot of brands who've done a lot of great things, like nothing is perfect. Like I always love how you say, like, it's about progress, not perfection. Like they'll have, they'll be doing really great things as far as body inclusivity, but then you'll know like that they didn't always show lots of diversity in their marketing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, it just becomes like this hard thing. And it's like, we have so few, I'm probably like a 2X, 3X.
Okay.
So I'm considered like a small fat person.
Right.
So a lot of times if a brand does an extended size line or extends their sizing, I'm usually included in that. So like what I'm doing now is I'm trying to work with brands that go beyond that. So brands that go up to like a 6X or a 7X or whatever. Mm-hmm. Because I think that there's change there that you can help with the change there.
Totally.
I don't know.
Totally. I mean, do you have some favorites that are doing that right now?
Well, I've worked with Eloquii. They do a lot of extended sizing. I work with Dia & Co. They go up to, I think a size 30, size 10 to 30. Universal Standard. I'm doing stuff with them, but I mean, there's also problems there, right? There's always, it's not perfect.
I mean, yeah,
but if I'm going to make a difference in the body, I'm not going to call it body positive space, but if I'm going to show people, because I'm a fashion content creator, if I'm going to show them like what's possible, sometimes I'm going to work with brands that are still working on themselves.
I mean, that's the reality of it right now.
Right.
I mean, that's what I tell everybody. Like, you have to pick your issue and go with it, because nobody is doing it perfectly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, nobody's doing it perfectly. there are definitely brands that I would love to work with that are both like working with sustainable materials, paying fair wages, like doing like ticking lots of the boxes for me. But they're smaller brands that aren't going to work with somebody like me because I don't have a huge following.
Exactly. So that has to make it more difficult. That's something I've thought about a lot. And it seems, this is in fact reality, that the fast fashion brands have been the ones that have jumped on extended sizing the most, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? This is something I ask everyone because I don't know.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this so much, and I have a very imperfect answer, a very imperfect theory.
Okay.
My theory is that it comes from the top, right? And by the top, I mean high fashion.
Right.
I'm talking like Gucci, like Dolce & Gabbana, like, these like high fashion runway brands, right? So those are brands that all other brands are trying to emulate the coolness of them, right? They're aspirational.
Right.
So these very fast fashion brands, they're just about speed, trends, making lots of money really fast. They don't really care about that overarching image. Right. Whereas these brands that are in the middle, that are still fast fashion brands, a lot of people don't realize it, but are like, well, to be cool is to fall within this standard of beauty that is set by these high fashion brands. So we're not going to do it because we don't want people to think we're not cool. And that's not, I'm going to go out on a limb here. That's dangerous. And it's kind of violent. Right?
Yeah.
Because it feeds into this idea of social currency and value and how fat people are. And I just speak to fat people because there's all these other the body positive movement was started by fat, Black, and disabled women. Right. So I'm just going to speak to it as a white, cis woman. That it's about being cool, and if a brand's like, they're not cool, people we don't even see how much fashion influences the way people think about people.
Oh yeah.
If we're not included, this brand is saying they're not worthy. Right. And it feeds into things that are scary, like medical bias, which I have directly experienced even as a small fat person. And I have there's this whole hierarchy within plus size community, like thin faced plus size people, so I have that privilege and have still had a cardiologist was like, you should really think about gastric bypass surgery.
What?
Yes. So I went to the doctor because my dad passed away of a heart attack when I was very young. So preventatively, as a preventative medicine, I go to the cardiologist and I get everything checked out. Well, I didn't go to the doctor for a very long time until, I started realizing I'm getting to be older. I should probably start to watch things, make sure that everything's looking okay. So I went and he had this cardiologist who was a fat cardiologist. He had, and I don't use that word derogatory, just so you know.
Right. Yeah.
Fat is, neutral term to me. He looked at my paperwork and my last blood work had been from when I had my second child, which was 4 years prior. And he was like, your cholesterol is really high.
Oh,
he said, you should probably think about gastric bypass surgery. And I don't know if anybody realizes the high risk that comes with people die from gastric bypass surgery.
My dad had it last year.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
He had, for one, he had blood clots. And then he had a bowel obstruction, which is,
oh my gosh.
So I'm freaking out when they admit him to the hospital during COVID, so no one can see him. He's just there in the emergency room alone.
That's terrible.
And they're scheduling him for surgery. And I was my whole family was freaking out. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be the one who educates myself about this so I can make everybody else feel better. And it is not an exaggeration to say that is a common complication of gastric bypass surgery. In fact, that was the adjective that I encountered time and time again, that it's very common because the weight loss is so fast and it's not healthy. My dad felt like shit for at least the first 3 months.
Oh, yeah. And that's a lot of people say that.
Yeah, he felt terrible. And you lose so much visceral fat that your organs start moving around because that's what was holding them in place. And so it's very common for your intestines to twist around because they're no longer being held in place the same way. It is a common side effect, complication, if you will. And it is not like a little tiny surgery.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and like I've heard about people who like you can't eat as much, so you can't get the nutrients that you need, and your hair starts falling out, and like nothing. Like that's a decision that I do not judge. Like you make that decision, and I think that's fine. But for a doctor to say that to me, and then it turns out that the blood work that he had, I said, was from when I was pregnant. Your cholesterol can rise up to 50% when you're pregnant. It's just a normal thing that happens to support your growing child,
right?
And my cholesterol is actually quite low. It was just that I didn't have updated blood work, and he took one look at me and he's like, "You're a fatty, so you have cholesterol problems and you should be thin."
I mean, this is so common though, even through the pandemic.
Yeah, and that's really not that bad. I mean, I've heard some stories that were just like totally insane. And it was just like on like the recent season of Shrill.
I haven't seen that character.
Yeah, she experiences medical bias. But anyway.
I love that show.
That show changed so much for me. It really did. So much.
I'm just like so glad it's out there because I hope that it's helping people see the aggressions that they engage in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, concern trolling is a big problem, but it's like we have to realize, like those of us looking at it happening, maybe not even being engaged in it, have to realize that it's not really concern. It's like it's coming from somebody. So I talk about this a lot. We look at fat people, myself in that group, and we don't have value for them, right? Us. And we think, how are they happy? I'm not happy. And I fit within this standard of beauty and standard of health. I'll put it, I'm putting it in air quotes. How are they not happy? And then, so I need to say something to them to make myself feel better. So concern trolling becomes the simplest, the lowest lying fruit, and I've lived in a thin body and in a fat body. So I could see the very distinct difference of being so visibly seen, right? We can't hide, but being so invisible at the same time, but also like, you're like, we're such a target, like we're such an easy target. So I don't know. It's such a problem, and it's like it's so multifaceted, and I see it even in like kids movies still, where these tropes still exist. Now I was a fat kid during Friends, and to a fat kid in the 90s, and this like I'm so like I'm not gonna say triggered. It's not the right word. I'm feeling away. I'm feeling away about this Friends reunion. Because it's like this show brought me did so much damage to me as a kid, but not only damaged me, but it created this thing that people believed in, right? Which is the fat Monica trope. And so many people are talking about it right now. I'm not original, but like you see these same ideas, like a fat woman. I watched a movie recently. I can't remember what it was called, a kids cartoon movie. And there were two fat people in the movie, one female identifying, one male identifying. And it was just the female identifying fat woman was the over-sexualized, throwing herself at men, very masculine voice, female. And I was just like, fuck, are you kidding? Excuse me. Are you kidding? And then the male fat person was a clown, and he just kept getting fatter and fatter because this movie took place over time. And I was like, and this is what my kids are seeing, and it's starting here. I'm working, we're working against so much, and it seems like so little, but it's such a huge thing. So anyway, it comes from going back to the fashion relation to it. It comes from the top.
I think so too. I mean, I've literally been in meetings where someone has said, using a plus size model isn't aspirational. You know, like one of my jobs, I was really campaigning aggressively for us to add sizes. And I said, we can't just add sizes, but then not shoot them on the models that they fit, right? Like that. Why that's so fucked up. And also how if you don't care about people or doing the right thing, how about if I just phrase it, you can't sell stuff if people don't know you sell it, right? So we have to bring in larger models. Like we need at least one plus size model for each collection. And then the squabbling was like, okay, well, we don't want it to be the lead image that you see when you're shopping. And I was like, why? Do you have data that proves anything that changes that? Because I was like, at ModCloth, we were like raking in the dough by actually being good humans and serving customers who want to buy clothing and feel good, just like everybody else who's like a smaller size. And it was like, well, I just don't think it's gonna, like, we're gonna see a decline in sales of that style because it's just not aspirational.
I mean, anecdotally, right? Like that's not true, right?
I know it's not true. The employer that I had worked the longest before I went to ModCloth was the terrible company where you and I both worked. And of course they did not, I mean, everybody, like the culture was so thin obsessed there that I felt embarrassed eating lunch. And of course our clothes ran like 2 sizes too small. And of course the models we used in our campaigns were all like 14 and prepubescent, right? But then I worked at ModCloth and I saw that actually their plus size business what was driving that entire company. That sales had plateaued a long time ago, and it was really by serving this customer who everyone else was ignoring that this company was growing and growing. And so coming from that experience, I was like, why are all of you so stupid? Like, you do all these other really cruel, exploitive things to all in the name of making money, right? Like, that's the reason. Why, if you're really in the game to just make money, why are you leaving so much on the table? I just don't get it.
I just recently likened it to, because it's all fake, right? Like all these beauty standards are made up. All these ideas about who's cool and who's not are made up, right? Because if we look through history, there are times when, women would shave their heads halfway up their, halfway up their head and shave their eyebrows off because that's what was beauty. And we look at now and they're like, that's wild. That's not beautiful. It's like, it was then. Somebody had an idea and said it, and a lot of people believed it, right? And I recently likened it to Crocs. Crocs, right? Crocs are like the shoe, and they're really effing ugly. And I'm alone in this.
I mean,
they're really effing ugly. And they had like a little, they had a little life where they were, people wore them, but not because they were cool. They wore them because they were new and they were, easy to put on, and they're great for kids, and they're, you can just wash them, and they're great for nursing and, working in a kitchen, that kind of thing, because they're very washable. Well, now Crocs are cool, right? All of a sudden, I'm not sure if your viewers have noticed this.
Oh no, I mean, I have been wearing them. Yeah.
Oh my God, I have Crocs. Like, look at my Instagram. They're like all over the place. Somebody said it was true, and a bunch of people believed it. Somebody said that fat people or, disabled people, Black people were not beautiful, and people believed it. I mean, is a huge discussion in this. It has to do with control and power, that kind of thing. But where I'm looking at it from the image part, right? Somebody said that fat people weren't beautiful, and a lot of people believed it. And so a lot of companies are very scared to serve that community because they're going to, have to show us, and they're going to have to include us. And what if the thin people see it? What's going to happen to their customer base? And it's so stupid if you think about it. But I've been thinking a lot about this because I recently talked about this on my TikTok and about this very issue, and it went crazy. And people were like, oh my gosh, that's right. Like, that makes total sense that companies think that way. But also the part that we're not thinking about is that those companies, and you said it, are made up of people that are within that standard of beauty. I know that at the fashion companies I worked at, I was probably one of the only fat people there. And why is that? It's because we don't have a stake in fashion. We're not given a stake. And why is that? Because we're not given we're not given an invitation via clothing options.
Oh, for sure.
So I went into fashion, like I said, very accidentally. And I think that if more fat people went into fashion, then there would be more people at the table making these decisions. At the one company or I pitched a plus size line at more than one company, but at the main one, I was the only person. What if I had 5 fat people behind me being like, yeah, here's what we want. Here's what we're doing, Like, would it have been different? And that whole idea also influences society. It becomes a very big, a big topic, because if you're not seeing fat people in marketing, then you're not giving value to people that look different. And it becomes this never ending cycle. And I hope it's changing, because I'm thinking about where I was 15 years ago and what was available to me and what's available now. And it is like, I know the younger people that are like interested in fashion and are plus size, like, will not understand this. There were 2 options, and it was Lane Bryant and Torrid. I remember going out with you specifically. We were going out to, where did we used to go? What was that place called?
The Barbary.
Yeah, we were going to the Barbary. And you and another gal that you hung out with were like, we're going to go and we're going to get outfits and we're going to, and I was like, oh God, what do I do? What do I wear? Like, there's no way I can wear cool clothes and go to this cool bar,
Yeah, well, because there was nothing.
There was nothing. And you just you had to make it work. And occasionally you'd get lucky and like Lane Bryant would make a shirt that was like somewhat like cool, or I'd like cut it, or I'd like sew it so that it would be, and it's just, but it's different. Like, now you can get things. It's not great. And it's oftentimes, like we were talking about, it's fast fashion and cheap materials, and you smell because the fabric is made of plastic. You know, but at least that's changing, and I hope that has kind of a domino effect, and people will go into fashion because they have a bit more of a stake in it, and that's my wish anyway.
I mean, I think that is amazing to think about, because in my career, going back to, we're talking about how, like, if you applied for a job and didn't get it because they were concerned about you having a kid, of course, they're not going to say that. They say you're just not a fit. Yeah. And everywhere I've worked in fashion, this term gets thrown around that I hate, which is cultural fit. And the idea of cultural fit, I suppose, is that you would theoretically, like, if the company is really into, like, working really hard and playing hard or something, I don't know, that you would ascribe to that same lifestyle. But that's when we're talking about a company that just like makes clothes. What is it? What does it mean to be a cultural fit? And why does that term get thrown out? And I think it often comes into like someone that we would want to represent our brand. And so, there are so many times in my career where we would bring in candidates who weren't white, or they weren't pretty enough, or they didn't have nice teeth. I just don't think they're a cultural fit. Like, that would be the pushback. Not that like they didn't have the right experience, or that they weren't smart, or didn't have good style. That was the kind of thing we would hear. And I'm going to tell you, I never once in my career have interviewed someone for a job who was larger than a size medium, because HR is gatekeeping that in the first place. They're not letting those people come in for interviews. Yeah. And that is why everybody in the industry is skinny and like unhappy. Yeah. Like the level of food negotiations my coworkers have been having throughout my career. I mean, I struggle with the same thing, because I'm like, if I eat too much food for lunch, people are going to talk about me.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I have a phobia about eating in a meeting at all.
Eating in public.
Yeah. You only have a bunch of skinny, hungry people working in an industry that says, okay, now we're going to pick out clothes for larger people and we're going to gatekeep what we think they should wear. And I was telling you, when I started at ModCloth, we had a separate buying team for plus sizes, and all of the women on that team were like a size 00. They would be like, yeah, the arms always have to be covered. We don't want to show any cleavage. It has to be like this. It definitely has to go below the knees because we don't want to see those knees, like that kind of stuff. And I was like, wait, did you guys like do consumer insights, like research on this? Like, is that how you know this? And they were like, no, we just know. And I was like, because I think you're wrong. Like, I come from a family of fat people, and I haven't seen everyone walking around in like what apparently looks like a graduation gown with a belt. Do you see what you're trying to put out here?
Oh my God. Oh, that hit.
Right?
Yes.
Right? Whatever this idea was that we were supposed to be buying was just so wrong. And it was really about these buyers' own visions of what it's like to be fat.
Right. Or what the media portrays us to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is fat Monica. Like asexual, non like covered up, stupid.
No one likes them. No one wants to go out with them.
They're super annoying.
Frumpy clothes. Yeah. Like the conceit there is like, because you have to remember that Monica is actually kind of like a really annoying character who's like really uptight and controlling, and and it's okay. It's cute when she's thin and she's like that, but when she's not, it's just like further proof that she is a terrible disaster of a person. And I also I didn't see Friends when it was on contemporarily. I have only seen it, this is so weird, but like traveling, it's always on TV in other countries, which is another.
That's really funny.
It's really funny, but also like, is this what I want our primary export to be?
Right.
And I saw several of the episodes with Monica in the fat suit, and it makes me so angry.
It makes me angry too. Plus, she's smaller than most plus size people, even in the fat suit.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Like, it's just.
And we're supposed to think it's funny. It's funny when Monica's in the fat suit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there's still a lot of that being the butt of the joke. It's such an acceptable form of discrimination that it's just wild. And people don't even notice they're doing it because it's so ingrained.
Oh, totally.
But there's also this hierarchy, right, that we create as humans where we always want somebody to be below us, right? And as long as fat people are below us, there's always going to be, or as long as, this is a huge, like, I talk about this with my husband a lot about how this is a big contributor to our current or our previous / current political situation that we're in. It's people feeling like they want somebody to be below them.
How do we change this?
Well, I think it has to come from the top. I think that's a part of it. I think it is changing, but it's very slow.
Very slow.
But I tend to be like a hopeful, optimistic person, so I could be totally off base. Like who knows? But I think it comes from the top, and I think it comes from if we're speaking strictly within fashion, it has to come from representation. So representation is everything. The more you see fat bodies being cool, aspirational, fashionable, sexy, the more you see it, the more you believe it. Seeing is believing, know? But until that happens, like even brands that are considered inclusive don't often, I'm thinking of like Madewell, don't show fat people on their Instagram feed. They don't, they offer this and it's kind of like, you're welcome, like.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. It's like and walk the walk.
Walk the walk. I'm also having a hard time with the word ethical. So there's brands that are touting we're sustainable and ethical fashion. for all, sustainable, ethical fashion for all. And I'm like, great, I have an option because I'm trying to make better choices here. And I'm trying to influence others to make, better choices if they can. And I go in and it goes up to an XL. I'm sorry, but how are you ethical if you only go up to an XL?
I mean, there you go.
It's not ethical to totally eliminate an entire group from, who you serve.
Exactly. And also it's like an extra large, but it really fits like a medium.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
and even that's a big problem too, because even I know like Chloe, like the high fashion brand Chloe, they go up to like, I think like a 2X, but a 2X is a 14.
Yeah.
That's not, it's just all very strange. And so, I mean, I think what people are doing that are doing it themselves, and I kind of think of myself as that, kind of like forgetting about the risk of what people are going to say and how people are going to treat you while doing it. I'm just going to put myself out there so people can see it. The more they see it, the more they're going to believe it. And I'm talking about my audience is mostly plus size people. The more they see it, the more they're going to believe it. And then they're going to do it themselves. And hopefully it'll be a domino effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's my hope too.
And just education and calmly talking to people about their biases. And that's really hard too.
Yes.
Especially like, I know my parents' generation, like being thin was a big thing. And they're still like to this day counting calories and doing Weight Watchers and this and that. And I'm like, I did it all. And I'm not spending my life doing that anymore. I'm just not going to do it.
Our parents came up in that culture, and I felt that pressure around me all the time. That adults would talk about my child body and express concern or not concern.
All the time.
Oh my God. My mom would do it so much with Dylan. Like, you need to put Dylan on a diet. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I feel like we make them into villains for doing that. And I think it's just out of fear because they understand this. I mean, in a lot of cases, some cases it's pure vanity, but I think in a lot of cases it's out of fear for how, like, I know that my mom did it out of fear of how people would treat me. I really do. I know for a fact she thought people would treat me badly. We're not in a position to change society, so I'm going to change you. I'm going to make you fit into it, And it's just like, no, I'm going to change society.
Yes, exactly. That's what needs to happen. And I do love like one really pushing brands that you like to do better. Just be like, hey, I noticed this only goes up to a size 14 that's really fits like a size 10. When are you going to dress more people? Like I've reached this point where I'm like, I'm not going to buy clothes from any brand that isn't trying their hardest to do the right thing. And that includes going beyond a size 8 and a 10 or whatever nonsense a lot of the current ethical, sustainable brands are doing. That infuriates me. I don't want to buy it.
And if we're talking about actionable things that things that we can do to actually affect change, like we can't change anything without people that are within the standard of beauty or this, standard of size. And that's why people that are in a standard size have to have that mindset for anything to change. Unfortunately, I think that's true.
It's totally true.
But that is something that you can do. You can encourage those around you who are a straight size to only buy from brands that do extended sizing. And I'm not talking about an extended collection. I'm talking about taking products that they already have and correctly size grading them, not just adding inches because that doesn't work.
No.
Correctly size grading them with fit models to fit a larger group of people.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. And like, listen, I'll tell you, working on the buying side and rolling this out at different brands I've worked, yes, it takes time. It takes money. Yeah. It takes hiring the right people to make it happen. But you know what? If a brand that I liked a lot, and I can't even really think of a brand that I really love at this point because I'm just trying not to buy anything new.
Yeah, and it's hard to not become like completely disillusioned.
Totally. But if a brand that I loved said, listen, hey, guess what we're doing? We're starting it. Here's where we are. Here's the timeline. Here's who we've hired. Here's when it's coming. And like, this is going to become a part of our regular collection by this date, and like regularly updated me on that, I would be so supportive of that brand. I would be yelling about it to anyone who would listen.
Yeah.
And so like, just like, it's doable.
Yeah.
I know that it's doable because I've done it, so just
right. And also
it.
just like as anybody who buys any kind of fashion, if you see something, say something.
Yes. Always relevant.
All right, I'll leave now. But no, I think that, you always just send a message. The more they see it, the more that it'll have an impact, and they'll think, there might be a market for this.
Yes.
Right? Always say something. I remember recently Tradlands, that brand Tradlands?
Yes.
Yeah, they had a sale recently. And I think that they, for what they do it well. They had a sale, and it was like, buy this top and get these shorts half off. And the top that they had the top in extended sizing, but they didn't have the shorts in extended sizing.
Shut up. Whose idea was this?
Right. Well, I think there's no representation there, probably, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote to them and I said, the shorts don't come in my size. And they wrote back immediately. They're like, we're working on it. We're working with fit models. So you can get 2 shirts and get the sale price. It's just like, okay, I guess that works, but I don't want 2 shirts.
No, you want the shorts.
Just the fact that they addressed it and they came up with a solution that would work in the moment. And I said something. So somebody there knows that this is a problem now, and maybe they'll think about it.
Absolutely. Be loud about it. That's the only way it's going to happen. I like, ultimately at the end of the day, even though it might not seem like it, companies do want to stay in business. Yeah. And they want to make money. And so they just need to know, they need us to tell them what's important to us. I'm going to be honest. There are some retailers that don't give a fuck about this and never will.
Of course.
I've worked for some of them. But there are other companies out there who are engaged in doing the best thing anyway, who if we push for it, will make this happen. They want to make us happy. And I think that's a big step forward in terms of making fashion more accessible.
Yeah.
I also just think calling people out on their bullshit in your personal life is so important.
Yeah.
I wish I could go to that doctor's appointment with you. We can build a time machine. We'll go, and we're going to tell him what's up.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You know what? Like, honestly, I think if you go to a doctor who fat shames you, fucking give them a bad review on the internet.
Yeah. I just I thought of all the things afterwards that I should have said,
That's my middle name. It's
monster.
Fine. Yeah.
But you're so shocked when it happens. Like, I heard about it happening so many times, and it has happened. A little on low key happened to me in the past, but never that glaringly, so it's crazy. And that kind of fat bias kills people.
I do feel like that we can change things.
I do think so too. I never thought that before, but now I do all of a sudden.
That's
and
great.
I don't know where that power is coming from, but I guess it's just, I'm not sure, but there's more people like me every day coming into social media, at least. And for all its flaws, there's so many flaws. There's so many flaws in social media.
Yes.
And there's so much bias and, censorship of fat bodies. I speak to fat bodies because I can't, that's my life experience, but there's so many other things, there's so much more to it. But for all that for all the reasons that it sucks, it really has done a good job with helping us create representation. So there's that. So we'll take it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do think man, don't get me started on social media. I feel like actually a lot of the problems that we have right now that we're facing were exacerbated by social media.
Absolutely.
And it's just fast fashion in general, right? And overconsumption and all the dumb vacations that people have to take where they need a whole new wardrobe and like
right. And the treat yourself culture. And,
yeah, exactly. That all comes from social media and like Facebook. I'm not going to blame MySpace for this because I just don't think MySpace was involved. You can tell me if you disagree, but definitely Facebook.
Sweet, innocent MySpace.
MySpace that's why MySpace went out of business. I think they just weren't like evil enough.
Yeah.
But then Instagram, like think about how living in this world changed with Instagram. And I think it's interesting that I've seen in the past couple of years, specifically more than anything, like the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and all of the other social and environmental justice issues that are really coming to a head right now, that now social media could possibly be a tool to undo some of that damage.
Right.
And I see like incredible stuff all the time that I think is really opening people's eyes, honestly. But, you know, the problem is that Instagram is like, yeah, but we're really here to sell stuff. So,
right. And it's been monetized and monetized and monetized and is rolling out even new things to monetize people even more, specifically targeting smaller content creators like me. So,
yeah.
So it's just like, don't insult our intelligence. We know what we're doing. I don't know if there's a way around it. It's very hard sometimes to make those decisions, at least for me, where it's like, do I show this? It's an ad. Basically, I'm just being used as a model in an ad, you know, when really my mission is just like, you can wear certain things and feel good and it can give you, you know, social currency. I don't know.
I mean, listen, these are all the things that I think about too. I'm excited about what you're doing though. And I think it's really important work and I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I am very proud of you as well. And I do have to say, you're listening to your podcast, specifically watching you on Instagram, because that's where I mostly watch. I've changed the way I think about things like plastic. And I'm just like, wow, you can really talk about plastic, but it's a seed is planted, right?
Yeah.
So let's be the seed, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I'm proud of both of us.
Yeah.
Congratulations
Go us.
to us. Yeah, we're really
we're
doing
amazing.
it. All right. Well, you all love Jess now, right? Because she is the best, all caps best. And I feel so honored to have her as a friend. Jess, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so glad that years ago, my employer bought, I think I'm remembering this correctly, ballet flats, or was it rain boots? Jess, you'll know. Maybe it was both. But we bought them from her employer, and then we got to meet. So lucky. You can find Jess on Instagram. Go follow her right now at Jess in Space. That's with one S in the Jess. Another S in space. I totally blew explaining that, but don't worry because I'll also share it in the show notes. I know this is the part of the episode, because we're coming down to the end here, where I give you a pep talk and get you all riled up to go conquer the world. So I'll just say this. Jess and I talked at the end of our conversation about planting the seeds of change with our work. But guess what? We're all doing that right now with the stuff we share on social media, the conversations we have with the people in our lives, and even to outside observers who totally don't know us when they see us living our lives in a responsible, compassionate, ethical, and mindful way. That was a lot of adjectives. I truly believe that kindness breeds more kindness, that good deeds create more good deeds, and we all have the power to change the world around us. We're all planting the seeds of change in our daily lives. Thanks for listening to another episode of Clothes Horse. Please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's the most exciting day of the week when I see a new review for the show. Thank you to everyone who's written one. Keep scattering those seeds of change by telling your friends about the show. And if you'd like to support my work here on the podcast / on social media, please consider becoming a patron. You can find out more at patreon.com/clotheshorsepodcast, Or you can make a one-time contribution via Venmo to @Crystal_Visions. And thank you to all of you who support my work in a multitude of different ways. I'm so grateful for all of you. Don't forget to check out my other podcast, The Department. We're in the midst of breaking down the internet sensation, the term that launched 1,000 think pieces and quizzes, cheugy. So go check that out. And thanks, as always, to Dustin Travis White for our music and audio support. Bye.